Good morning, listeners.
First, how was the survey compiled?
The survey is a household-based survey. It's a random sample of 30,000 distributed proportionately across the 9 provinces, and of course stratified by or divided into urban and rural areas. So it reaches out to about 90,000 persons who have to express their views on their experiences of crime, their perceptions around crime. It is a representative sample, and it complements, or they complement each other with the ones that is reported by the police. That is reported as an administrative record of when one experiences a crime, he goes and reports it to the police. This one is about households who have experienced a crime. Of course, there would be differences between what the police report and what the survey reports in terms of levels, that is the numbers. But the trends would demonstrate the same kind of trend.
Let's talk a little bit about this housebreaking. And earlier on in our intro, we mentioned it, and then I invited people to write to us. Tsepo ME_E writes in and says, had a housebreaking last week. Lucky I was still around. I became a monster that day. The law has to be tight on them. Just talking about housebreaking, the fears of South Africans and what emerges from the survey. Is it because people experience it often? Is it because they get second-hand information? What actually is driving the fear?
I think the evidence is there that South Africans do experience levels of housebreaking that is much higher than any other level of crime that they experience. And I think the circumstances around which they experience it is such that they are always in the house, probably alone, probably in a house with a high wall, and therefore the fear is terrible that you have no one to talk to when you are in that kind of circumstance.
Yeah.
So it is the frequency with which they experience it, the numbers that experience it, and the trauma that you are exposed to when you are all by yourself at home and you experience this.
And is this urban, rural, peri-urban? Where's the major vulnerability, or it just cuts across?
No, it is largely an urban phenomena. Rural areas not so much, except on the farms where this is experienced. On the farming communities, they do experience a lot of this.
Yeah.
But in rural areas, under traditional rule, there is not much of that at all.
Here's something else that's interesting, following what people are saying. Rastiza21 says, my family and I had numerous break-ins. Fortunately, it didn't leave us broke nor took a life. Unfortunately, it's people I know. Is that evidence also in the survey that this is crime that is perpetrated more often than not by people that the victims know?
Yes, indeed, in the perceptions, in the question on the question of who are the perpetrators, there are people. They say, well, there are people within the community itself. So it is done by, if it is within the community, then it should be by people that you generally know. And in fact, when you look at reported crime at the police station, you find that that number in absolute terms is much lower. Under-reporting of crime as an administrative record is very, very low. That is when reported to the police.
Yeah.
So it's people you know, and then you negotiate yourselves around it, and it's not reported to the police.
Wow.
But it is that kind of, it has a social dimension to it.
So is there general concern as well about the effectiveness of the police and justice system? Is that the sense where people think we can just settle this matter on our own?
I suppose if it's people you know, you talk about it and the goods maybe get returned, or it has its own sociology.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether it is because the police may be ineffective or the law may be too slow, but I think it's all about how harmoniously you perceive you may be living together, or maybe there might be a repeat. There is a whole sociology driving this kind of levels of reporting.
Yeah. What were the other findings of the survey?
Well, the other findings of the survey is really about how South Africans, whether South Africans are safe and feel safe.
Yes.
The survey reflects a situation that they don't feel safe at home, they don't feel safe in the streets. But generally, in terms of trust in police, they have about 77% that police are trustworthy. So there is that level. It's a little drop from what it was in 2010. I suppose the 2010 aura had its own aura. But though lower, I don't think statistically significant. We have to observe what happens across time.
Yeah.
But on that subject of whether South Africans are safe and feel safe, the data suggests that they don't.
Okay. Just finally, Pali Lehohla, we run out of time. What happens to this survey? You've done the research, we've communicated about it. What then happens to it?
Well, it's for policy to look at what its aspects and the ramifications and the manifestations of crime.
Okay.
And then, of course, how South Africans respond to it and the police too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Pali
Thank you
Lehohla
very
joining
much.
us from our studios in Pretoria.